We're here. We made it. We have a very special guest, J.K. Bridges, with us today. We'll be talking about the expansive world of recruitment. We find ourselves yet still here in a pandemic, and in the face of remote work, and in the face of virtual work, where some are going back to the office, some never left, some are working in remote distribution teams. This is a very intriguing subject as to where we are today. And we have none better than to share that with us at the Christopher Lafayette podcast show. JK, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
We're happy to have you with us. Who's JK Bridges?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. But if I had to be simple, J.K. Bridges is just a good old fashioned Southern girl. I'm sure you can tell by the accent. Louisiana by way of Mississippi have not changed. But most importantly, I'm probably what you would consider a dying breed of recruiters. I believe in working with people, given probably what most people will overlook, that demographic. I'm one of the ones that will give them a chance for it. And I'm just grateful for the platform that I've been allotted to be able to speak with you here, as well as the opportunities that have now been carved out with me or for me here at GovSpin.
So that we can better understand, to bring us all in to your world, we may know what a recruiter is. And I know that sounds so standard, but right. I've come to appreciate, to better understand that I don't understand. What is a recruiter today?
Okay, that's definitely a fair question. And the world of recruitment, Mr. Lafayette, has changed tremendously. I have been in this industry as a recruiter and corporate trainer and several other titles that I've held on the HR side right at 28 years. Because, you know, I started this when I was only 4, right? But nevertheless, in those 28 years, recruiting has changed dramatically. I'm going to flash forward today in 2021. Recruitment is really essentially about 2 things. Number one, it's about maintaining your pipeline, making sure that you have a plethora of candidates where you can always backfill positions as they become empty, because it's no hidden secret. Right now, the job market is actually an employees market. It's no longer the reverse. And so with that being said, you have more and more employees job hopping. Item number 2, recruitment is basically being a person, be a human being, knowing how to maintain a respectful but yet a sincere dialogue with the individuals in which you're communicating with. Because most importantly, that is actually a lost art within our industry. That's why most of the time, if you go up and down the various platforms, Mr. Lafayette, you will see where there's such negativity when it comes to recruiters. And that's why you heard me say in my opening statement, I'm a dying breed, because I pride myself in saying, yes, I'm old school. I still do a lot of recruitment, yes, the new way, but I also heavily do a lot of things through grassroots operations.
What is your current focus on in the world of recruitment today?
So my current focus, the last 10 or so years, I have been in heavy technical recruitment. Technical recruitment is anything on the information technology side of things. That is currently what I'm doing here with GovSpin. I'm also now part of the corporate DE&I initiatives here that we have within GovSpin. And so under that umbrella, I'm essentially the face, the speaker on behalf of the company for recruitment within the tech space for those that's transitioning military, our veterans, military spouses such as myself, women in technology, and of course, minorities. And the information, the research is out there, Mr. Lafayette, as you could imagine, where each of those demographics are still tremendously low. And it's unfortunate that we have such amazing talent, individuals that's in the military, our veteran demographic, even military spouses, where they're not being given fair opportunities within roles for IT. And so my goal and my initiative and my company have entrusted in me to make sure that the word is out. So that is an initiative that we have here within GovSpin to make sure we're giving a hard look and true consideration to that particular underserved demographic.
You know, we always have a special place here for our servicemen and women at the Christopher Lafayette podcast show, and those that support them and everything that they do for our country, and the hard work that we're aware of and the hard work that we're not. A lot of us come from those families. I certainly come from a military family and have been observed for years, born on a base, to understand to some sense on the sacrifice of what they do here domestically and internationally. And speaking to the importance of that, because I don't want to go and run away from that just yet.
Okay.
When we talk about DEI, for those that are listening who may not be familiar, diversity, equity, inclusion, bring us into this world. When we talk about DEI, I know that businesses and companies tend to look at that as just as a notion of color.
Right.
But you and I know that it's much more than that.
Absolutely.
It's much more expansive than that. Bring us further. Let's lean in for a moment from your lens perspective and understanding of professional outlook presently of what we've come to know what DEI is now.
Fair enough question. You're right. DE&I is a very expansive definition. And sadly, so many people, you know, I'm going to be polite here when I say this, but you have those that tend to only think it deals with minority hiring. That is not the case. DE&I involves, as what I've already repeatedly said, it involves the aforementioned demographics. Our transitioning military, making sure we're giving them a close look, our veteran demographic that oftentimes goes unhired or not hired at all, military spouses, because sadly, you know, we often get a bad reputation that, oh, why we want to hire that person? They're only going to be there for 2, 3, or 4 years, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, persons of disabilities. That's another underserved demographic, which DE&I covers as well. A lot of corporations fail to realize that there is a high, functioning for productivity with individuals with disabilities. And so that can range from anything of someone being in a wheelchair to a person that's an amputee, to even an individual that suffers from PTSD and many, many, many other things that can fall on the definition of someone being a person of disabilities. So that also falls in that demographic. And so yet again, we here at GovSpin, we pride ourselves on that initiative. And I'm grateful to be part of that corporate team. I'm not the primary person for DE&I here, but I am one of the individuals. And I'm grateful that for the things that I'm specifically doing here in corporate talent acquisition, it definitely does give me the opportunity to be able to educate individuals. So I'm glad that you posed that question, because I do want people to understand that, you know, DE&I goes well beyond just hiring for minority groups. And when we say minority groups, let me also say that constitutes a whole nother definition within itself beyond just the color spectrum. It doesn't just mean persons that's of African-American descent. This can include the Asians, you know, this can include other, you know, ethnicities out there. As long as you're considered, quote unquote, by definition of our federal government, if you are a minority. So those of you that loves to be handy and you got these fancy items in your pocket, you know, pull them out and look up the definition of a minority, and you will understand it goes well beyond just individuals that is African-American.
Let's lean in on GovSpin for a moment.
Yes.
Under the banner of recruitment,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned technical recruitment and all the years that you've been involved in this sector, where does GovSpin fit? Where does it fit when we start talking about recruitment?
Uh-huh.
it's we typically hear about recruitment for beginning stage hiring practices,
Right.
scouting, seeking, searching, looking for great talent in top tier. Where does GovSpend fit in this equation?
That is a great question. GovSpend, let me just kind of give you a little bit of back history so that when I respond to that, it'll all make sense, Mr. Lafayette. So GovSpend, we are an organization that have actually been around a total of 26 years. We are a 100% remote company. I'm proud to say that in the 26 years, even though I have not been with them for those 26 years, but in the 26 years that we've been in existence, we are the only company, let me emphasize, the only company here in North America that do what we do. What do? We aggregate financial data specific to governmental purchase order spending, and we've been very successful in creating various services and products that we now, quote unquote, package and deliver to our very own clients and vendors and so forth to aid in their abilities to be able to have a greater insight into governmental spending all the way from city, state, and federal when it comes to their bidding process. And so that's what makes us very, very popular. And so in terms of how we recruit, we are our particular tech stack, for those of you that's techies out there that's listening in on this podcast, we are back end full stack development in a niche area of functional programming. I have to heavily emphasize functional programming. Those of you that's familiar, functional programming is an area in which we live and breathe. I will admit we do primarily hire those that's senior level and above. However, yes, the however is the good thing is by me now being part of the DEI initiative here, Mr. Lafayette, it now allows me to be able to look at individuals that's entry to junior level to give them opportunities that most of the time not only we, but even other organizations wouldn't give them. Now, yes, what we are looking for in those entry to junior level individuals are what we call the higher functioning ones, meaning they may have very little or limited physical work expertise, but as long as they're able to come in and blow out the water, for lack of better phrasing, their interview, but most importantly, do phenomenally well on the technical assessments, because we do require technical testing as part of our hiring process, then it is that demographic of the entry to junior level applicants and candidates that we will closely look at for consideration of hire. And believe it or not, we have, since I've been here, we actually have hired entry and junior level applicants for certain roles that met the criterion that I just described.
Let's go back so that we can go forward.
Okay.
How did you get involved in the world of recruitment, and what has inspired you along the way to stay with it?
Oh, wow. That is definitely a loaded question. So I'm going to do my best to make it very, very simple. Mr. Lafayette, if you look at me, even though I've been in recruitment for 20 odd years, you probably would never think that I've done anything else. But in actuality, I have. I have worked in let me say this, prior to coming into the recruitment and HR and corporate training world for the last 20 odd years. Prior to that, I had another life. I was in journalism for a while. I was in marketing for a while. I even did a little bit of sales for a while. I was in healthcare for a while. I was in banking and finance for a while. And I was even a teacher for a while. Why is that important for me to share? Notice I say it very early on, I'm a dinosaur, right? That I'm of a dying breed. I believe in giving what I call the underserved demographic a chance. There was somebody that gave me a chance, because I was one of those individuals, even though I'm a college graduate, I was a very confused person. I did not know what the heck I wanted to do. And I always like to share that story because many times, especially now more than ever, Mr. Lafayette, as you know, our job market has changed tremendously over the last 15 years. And so you may have had people that have previously been in banking for, 18 or 21 years, and now all of a sudden they're coming into the technical world. And so there's a lot of reason that people change professions. And so for me, I can relate to that. And that's why I emphasize very early on, I still believe in keeping that humanistic aspect, that humanistic approach alive and well. And that's something that I wish more of my fellow recruiters would do as well. I can't speak for them. I'm sure they have their very own reasons for the things that they do or don't do. But I just know for me and, a small number of others of us that still think and feel that way, we do that because we know you can never avoid the fact of dealing with the human being. And so for me, I fell into recruiting, and yes, I do say fail. I fell into recruiting because I was employed with an organization, Comp USA, definitely probably aging myself by saying that, but we was basically the Best Buy of the 80s and the 90s. And then, we went through some corporate changes, and then actually Best Buy, we ended up selling our inventory to Best Buy. So believe it or not, had it not been for Comp USA, there would not be a Best Buy. And I had 11 successful years with Comp USA. I had someone, Mr. Lafayette, that took me under her wing, that really, observed a talent in me, that observed a spirit within me in terms of me being a people person. And that's how I ended up falling into, recruitment in HR. I started out in dibbling and dabbling in different aspects of HR. I was in, compensation and benefits for a period of time. I did employee relations for a period of time. And then ultimately I found my way in corporate training and recruitment. And then I was like, voila, here's my sweet spot. And that's where I've been ever since, 20 some years later.
Remarkable in so many ways. Let's take it to present day.
Yes.
But before we do that, a brief recap. March 15th, 2020, the pandemic globally ensued, and many of us went into our homes and fortifications. That's what we now know as quarantine lockdowns. Right. Companies began to change overnight on how they go about working, how they go about distribution. We saw devastating disruption, which still has systemic effect to this day in supply chains of products and goods. Delivery of services dramatically changed. Some became non-existent. Some platforms in this world became more prevalent than they ever have before. As the pandemic ensued and continued, there was a heavy loss of life.
Right.
At this moment, we're going to talk about humanity and how we look at recruitment. Now, for many of the people that have succumbed and their demise has been of COVID, they worked at jobs, they worked at companies, and there's vacancy in their positions.
Of course.
Of your understanding and expertise, how are companies preparing to fulfill these vacancies and adjust for this type of new weather in business?
That is a great question. And, I see that question from a couple different angles. First, I will start by saying, yes, the pandemic woke all of us up in every sense of the word, all the way from corporations to employees of the various corporations. The major takeaway that I'm going to say on that, Mr. Lafayette, is the fact that I'm grateful that now many corporations finally had that wake-up call. And when I say a wake-up call, meaning they now recognize immediately that a lot of what they were forcing, or maybe I shouldn't say forcing, but was permitting individuals to come into an office to do, they now recognize by default that these individuals are able to successfully do those jobs just as successful, if not even more successful, by working from the creature comforts of their home. And I think for me, when I look at it from a professional standpoint, that is the biggest takeaway. And for years, I've been very blessed. I've always, or I would say more than 90% of all the jobs I've had, Mr. Lafayette, I've always been remote, or I had jobs where I heavily traveled, or a combination of thereof. And so for me, seeing this, it just made me say, and I've had conversations with many people, if you can have a CEO that can sit in the confines of a private dining room or even the comforts of his home office and close a multi-million or even billion-dollar deal, and we certainly know that there are people that do that. Let's think about the LeBron James of the world and the Mark Cubans and, you know, the Elon Musk and so forth. I mean, there's hundreds of others we could name as well. But if they can close these type of million-dollar deals in the comforts of their home, why is it that any corporation would not think that someone that's simply picking up the phone and saying, hi, thank you for calling company ABC, how may I direct your call? What make you think that someone that works in sales and customer service and, you know, all these other divisions, to include what I do here in corporate talent acquisition, I'm able to do this from the comfort of my home, and I'm able to do it successfully. And most importantly, by my job being remote, if I decide to travel somewhere, guess what? I can still comfortably do my job. And so I only use that analogy to say that I'm grateful that companies now recognize that. I think that's the first takeaway. I would have to say the second takeaway from this, I think that this somewhere along the way, and I'm not saying companies did it intentionally, but I think somewhere along the way, companies forgot to appreciate its employees, its very own human capital. And I'm grateful that here at GovSpin, historically, they have had this reputation for right around almost 8 to 10 years, if not longer, of appreciating their employees. And I think that there are a lot of companies that have been behind that curve. And now they recognize that more than ever, because you can look at all the statistics from studies and reports that's out there by Career Builder and Monster and other well-respected organizations. I think even LinkedIn recently released a report where they were talking about, you know, all the job hopping, why so many employees are leaving their employers. And I think that that is going to continue to happen if companies, if corporations don't find themselves in a better position to show a greater appreciation for their employees.
Are we looking at remote work and distribution teams? Are we looking at this, the new standard? Is this something that we're saying that HR companies are saying, hey, and taking a reevaluation and reassessment and saying, hey, of all these options and benefits, because let's look at this for a second, a little bit further. Here I am in Silicon Valley, and I often ask myself from time to time, how much money in this past year, and not just a year now, we're firmly well into year 2.
Yes.
How much money has Google, Apple, Facebook, Intuit, Intel, and other platforms saved just on a cup of coffee? We'll let the audience consider that, just how much, with no people to give coffee to, and the fringe benefits that have been extended, certainly in technology campuses. JK, when we think at the time that we're at now, where remote work pre-pandemic was almost fringe, was almost, it's professional, but it's not almost professional. But now in a lot of ways, thousands, not just a few, and hundreds, tens of thousands are saying, look, I've got my 14, 16-hour work commute back.
Yes.
I'm not giving that back up. I'm able to do my job more efficiently than ever.
Yes.
Pinterest said, hey, here's $91 million for your lease. We're buying out of this.
Yes.
Twitter, and Jack Dorsey's Twitter says, hey, you don't ever have to come back again. Salesforce says, hey, we're going to go with the hybrid work. Microsoft advocating for hybrid work, discussing it. JK, is this for real?
Oh, it's absolutely for real. All the companies that you mentioned, to include here at GovSpin, prior to the pandemic, we had close to 15 different geographic locations across the continental US. And other than our headquarters, which is in Deerfield Beach, Florida, we only have just that location. Everything else, our entire corporation has now been consolidated to a 100% remote operation. Everything we do here, from our marketing team to our sales team to even my team here in corporate talent acquisition, you name it, we are all remote. And this is a trend that is going to continue, because now corporations have finally recognized that, oh, wow, we can save on real estate, meaning a lot of these companies, they were leasing very high prices, from these different other organizations that was out there. And like you said, they saving on coffee, but not only that, let's look at what the employees is saving on. The employees, we're saving on the wear and tear of our cars. We're saving on the wear and tear of our bodies and our mental psyche. And let's not forget about our mental well-being. I mean, we've had many, many people that have come forward, celebrities as well as non-celebrities, that have spoken about the importance of mental well-being. And so there are studies that support as well as prove that, now that individuals are being able to work remotely, there is a much greater, healthier, mentally healthier demographic of individuals that's out there. So to answer your question, do I see this changing? Absolutely. Do I see this continuing to change? Yes. The evolution of remote work is going to continue to evolve. Are you going to have corporations that will go back into the office? Yes. How that will look, that is yet to be, disclosed. I think it's going to look very different for each and every entity. And I think it's going to depend on the particular industry that you're in. Now, there are just some professions, as you can imagine, you're going to have to just go into the office, say, for instance, policemen and firefighters and, those that's in the healthcare industry. Those are professions that, most likely it's kind of hard to say, you almost pretty much just have to go into the, the office for that. But even with those, you're going to see more and more where you're going to have what's called telehealth care, where now a lot of appointments that people used to waste time sitting up in a doctor's office 3 and 4 hours just to be seen by a doctor. Now these things are being done via video until there are more severe or more life-threatening issues at hand. So honestly, what we recognize, Mr. Lafayette, as the remote world and remote work, it's evolving in every spectrum, in every industry there is. But just keep in mind, it's going to look different for every industry.
Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Facebook,
Yes.
stated at the top of the year in Q1 2021, she said, in the year of 2020, Facebook hired over 17,000 people that have never set foot on our campus.
Mm-hmm.
JK, in closing, let me ask you,
Sure.
what's the most important thing that we should know about what you do and work?
The most important thing that I want people to know that I do is, as I said, I'm here in corporate talent acquisition as well as corporate DE&I. And with that, I have a very strong passion for making sure that I continue to advocate. Yes, not only am I a recruiter, I'm also an advocator. I advocate for the underserved, for the underdog, as a lot of people like to say. So if you are transitioning military, veteran, military spouse, spouses, women that's interested in tech or are already in tech, but don't feel that you're being given the opportunities that you're looking for, and definitely other minority sectors, and even our persons with disabilities, please reach out to me. Look at our website, which is www.govspin.com/careers, and look at those opportunities that is there available, and apply if you find something of interest. If you do, use the referral code LinkedIn-JK Bridges. Again, the referral code is LinkedIn-JK Bridges. And I'm certainly willing to, look at all those individuals. Those applications will be funneled to the appropriate divisions, especially if it happens to be a role that someone applies to that is not within the IT side. Keep in mind, I am in technical recruiting, so there may be roles that individuals apply to, but if they contact me and let me know that they applied for those roles, I can definitely make sure that the appropriate recruiter and or hiring manager is aware of the demographic that they fall under and that they applied through our DE&I initiative.
Everyone, you've heard it here first and extensively. JK, on a very short list of mine, is a premium go-to for good information and express understanding on the world of recruitment. I highly recommend you lean in with her, all of our HR members, C-suite, hiring managers, and recruiters. Lean in with JK. She is a value add to your ecosystem, whether you are directly involved vertically in what she does or not. In the world of work, you definitely, in the world of work, want to add her in. JK, we look forward to having you back again to give us even more as we continue on the pioneering path of work of where we find ourselves in this pandemic. We certainly hope that all of you listening today are keeping well, and building strong.
Thank you.
JK, thank you for joining us.
It's been my pleasure.